Hello class, today we're going to learn 7.6, which is now radical equations. So you've learned how to simplify radicals, how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, which is actually rationalizing the denominator, but now this, for example, with an equals. So you have to get x alone, and the first problem, cancel it. So we're going to cancel the square root with a square. But of course, that's only legal if you do it to both sides of the equation. So on the left, the square and the square root cancel. And on the right, you have 4 squared, which is 16. Then you just isolate x like you always have, add 2 to both sides, divide by 3. And then, guess what? Because you square both sides, you cancel negatives, which makes it possible that we can get what's called an extraneous solution. So it may not actually work. So we have to check it. And so we plug it back into our original. So I have the square root of 3 times 6 minus 2. And I'm going to see if that equals 4. So we get 18 subtract 2, which is the square root of 16. And so it does, in fact, work. So that's our answer. Alright, let's try another one. How about this one? Oh, I lied. This one. Alright, now this one has an additional term with the radical. And we haven't seen that yet. And guess what? Before you ever square both sides, you have to isolate the radical. So in this case, it's a cube root, but we have to get that cube 2 from both sides. Now, I repeat, just like I started this problem, I cancel a cube root, but not with a square, with a cube. So I'm going to cube both sides of the equation. So the cube and the cube root cancel, and -1 times -1, and then to get x alone, I'll add 5 to both sides. So I get 4. Now, when you cube it, you don't cancel negatives, do you? See, we cubed a negative and it stayed negative. So you can't actually get extraneous solutions when you raise it to an odd power, only an even power. But it's still good to check, so practice plugging it in and making sure that you're good. If you put in 4 right there, you have the cube root of -1, which we know is -1. And -1 plus 2 is 1. So you can still check it and make sure you're right. Alright, now this one's probably the most important one we've done so far. And you'll see why. Alright, just like this one, it has something else with the radical. So we're going to begin by isolating the radical. So I'll add x to the other side. And since our minds work a little better with the x first, I'll just write that in front. But you could have 3 plus x or x plus 3. Then we cancel the square. Now here's the important part. Listen, listen. You don't square to square whole sides. So I have to square this entire side like that, which means we're going to be foiling to solve it, doesn't it? So right here, the square and square root cancel. But on the right side, it's like I have this times itself. So we've got first times the first, outside times the outside, inside times the inside, last times the last. Now, all semester, when you see an x squared and an x, it has to be equal to 0. So I will take everything to the right side. So my x squared will stay x squared. Now here I've got 6x, don't I, if I combine those two. And if I add this x, then I'm going to add this, I'm going to subtract this 9 from both sides. So it just so happens the 9 cancels, doesn't it? So this is what I have. But still, I have x squared and x, so I know I need to set it equal to 0 and factor. And here, I just factor out the common factor, x, which gives me that. Now, setting each factor equal to 0, I get 2 answers. I get 0 and I get -7. -7 by setting x equal to 0. So, because we squared both sides, we have to check our work. So I'm going to plug it in. Let's see, I have 9 minus c and x. And I get the square root of 9, which is 3. And that's still minus 0, so I see that that is true. But let's try negative 7. Let's see, I could have 9 subtract negative 7 minus 7, and we're going to see if that equals 3. So this is 9 plus 7, isn't it? So I have the square root of 16 minus 7 equals 3. 4 minus 7 equals 3. And you can see that that is not true. If the signs were different, it would be. But as it is, that is not true, which means this is not a solution. So, on a multiple choice test, it's common for them to give you A, both of them, B, 0, C, negative 7, that we do them all in our notes. So, first of all, always begin, then you're going to cancel that root with a power. And if it's if you have to square, just don't forget that you have to FOIL. Square the whole side. Now, if there were 2 radicals, you would repeat that process, but we don't have any of those in our homework yet. You'll see that in 1050. And then what you can't forget to do is you have to check for extraneous solutions. Good luck on that. This is something that's pretty much, I don't know, I would say it's on your final exam 90% of the time. So you need to make sure that you can do these. See you later.